What's up? What's up? And welcome back to the Plant Powered People podcast with your hosts,
Toni Okamoto
and Michelle Cehn. Today, we're bringing on to the show Shawn Remy.
It was really important to us when we first started this podcast to bring on someone who worked in a restaurant serving animal products. And it was especially important to me because I wanted to share that just because you adopt a plant-based lifestyle doesn't mean that you quit your life. It doesn't mean that your responsibilities go away and you get a whole new job. So if you're working in a restaurant, we really hope this episode is helpful to you.
Toni and I are really lucky. We both have full-time jobs working in the vegan space. And so we don't really have to worry about this or think about this, but that's not how it is for most people. We are so grateful to have Shawn on today to talk about how he managed working as a vegan, plant-based dude in a non-vegan restaurant, and how he was even able to take that opportunity to influence some pretty epic change.
Now on to the show.
Before we jump in, we had something pretty exciting just happen. We got our first Patreon supporter.
Hey, Melody.
Thank you, Melody. For those of you who don't know, Patreon is a platform where listeners of our show can support the work that we're doing with a donation that's monthly for even just like $1, $2 a month. And it helps us cover the costs of producing this show and helps us be able to keep this resource free and ongoing for years to come, hopefully.
It's been important to Michelle and I to create a super high quality resource so we get all of the episodes professionally edited, and we invest so much of our own time and money, and we're so happy to do it. But if you could contribute anything, we would be so grateful.
Every bit of support really does make a huge impact and will help us reach more people with this podcast. And if you want to support, you can check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/plantpoweredpeople. We've also got that linked up in the show notes as always, which you can find at plantpoweredpodcast.com.
Hello, Shawn. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So we met Shawn in a pretty unconventional way. Michelle and I were doing a video for Plant-Based News on the Impossible Burger, and we went to a restaurant that's right near my house called Hook and Ladder, and we were looking for a seat, and then Michelle had some specifications about the lighting and the noise and the background, and so she goes to Shawn, who was our server, and was like, your accommodations are not good enough.
Well, Toni was telling me about this back area of the restaurant that was just beautiful, shaded, quiet, perfect lighting. Like,
it's really beautiful.
Just really beautifully set up. And I was like, hey, excuse me, I don't see anyone out there. Is it possible for us to go out there while we film this?
Yeah, there was a big closed sign.
And Shawn's like, are you vegan? Like, I don't even remember how that conversation happened, but
you said you were shooting for Plant-Based News.
No. Oh, I thought you asked if we were vegan first. No?
No, I said we were shooting for Plant-Based News.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, Plant-Based News, like Plant-Based News UK, like Klaus. You're like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I love Plant-Based News. And then you guys were like, oh, you're vegan. And I was like, yeah. And then so I went and asked the management, and honestly, they would have said no unless I asked.
And then instant BFFs.
Oh, instant. Yeah. It was so perfect. That was so perfect because we were going to a restaurant that was specifically not super vegan friendly, but that had the Impossible Burger. So the last thing we expected was the person working there to be vegan and then hooking us up with all the behind the scenes areas. Yeah.
And not only that, but to be in the know of Plant-Based News and the kind of work that we do. And I thought that was really cool. And not only that, but Shawn had seen Michelle at the grocery store and was like, this lady is filming and is
like a week before.
Yeah, I was literally within probably like 10 days of meeting you. I seen you on the phone with your camera in the spice aisle while I was getting nutritional yeast, and I think you're filming the vegan eggs.
So true. Yeah, Whole Foods brings everyone together. So we didn't even meet then, but saw one another and then officially met a week later. How cool.
Yeah, that is so cool.
And now here we are in my guest bedroom filming this podcast.
So Shawn, tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from? How old are you? What are you into?
Well, I'm 33 years old. I'll be 34 on Christmas Day.
Ooh.
And I'm from Lodi, California.
Oh, wait, really quick question. while you were growing up, did you get a birthday and Christmas celebration, or did you have to share it all in one celebration?
That's probably one of the most common questions I get asked whenever the birthday does come up. When I was a kid, I was like super poor, but for some reason, every year Christmas came, there was always presents around. I don't know if it was because of the surrounding families, but Christmas presents I would get on Christmas Eve, and then when I woke up in the morning, I would get my birthday presents.
Oh, that's nice.
That was like kind of nice because, you know, considering the situation on Christmas, there was always something there.
That's really cool. Okay, so and where did that take place? Where are you from?
In Lodi, California. It's about 35 to 40 miles from Sacramento.
And
south.
What's it like there? From what I know, it's really small and rural. Is that right?
Yeah, it's small. I would say maybe 40,000 people possibly in Lodi now, maybe. And it's really known for its wine, if anything. And a lot of people go there to even retire and like outside on the outskirts of Lodi.
Cool. And what did you grow up eating?
A typical westernized diet.
For example?
Just, I don't know, box scallop potatoes, lots of meat, eggs, you know, American cookouts on the weekends with grandpa, eggs, bacon, biscuits with butter, and turkey sandwiches, you know, like I say that's like the standard way of the 80s, 90s.
Yeah, definitely.
And at any point, did your family have the connection that the food that you put in your body was how you were going to feel, or was that something that happened totally later?
No, that's something that happened later. But one of the things I remember from being a child was asking my family when I was little that food was supposed to be fuel. Why do I always get really tired after I eat this meat? And it was always because you need to eat it now, just eat it. And so I was just confused because every time I ate meat, I was really tired and I wanted to go to sleep, big time.
I feel like a lot of people don't make that connection until they're in their older years and start to have like aches and pains and lethargy from food. Like kids have this magical resilience to be able to not feel the effects of eating like crap. So that's so cool that you were in tune enough to notice that.
Yeah. In one of our episodes, I talked about how I had never even considered food as something more than taste. And it wasn't until I was running track and feeling really awful physically that my coach made the connection for me. And it was mind blowing. I was like, what? The food that I put in my body it affects how I perform and feel. That's amazing. But I had never considered it and I had never heard it. And it was never brought up in my family. And now I just think that's really sad because so many people feel like you were feeling before where you were tired and not feeling well. So at what point did you want to know more about that?
When I got into my 30s.
Okay.
Yeah, when I got into my 30s, being an athlete wasn't enough anymore. I've always been skinny body type to the average person. But I would say malnourished for 30 years. So not eating enough calories. I didn't undereat, but there was days when I ate one time. So whenever I did eat, I would eat so much food that I would just be destroyed afterwards because I just grew up not having money to be able to buy food and stuff.
And what were you eating? You said you didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah, I would eat cheaper food, but I would be getting pasta and doing a whole can of Alfredo sauce, which nowadays I can easily eat a pound of spaghetti, but I'm not eating this high fat, high oil sauce or a meat sauce to where I can only eat maybe 2 servings of the pasta before I just felt tired and passed out. So it's a huge difference being able to eat 16 ounces of pasta now. And the difference is you don't get tired after you eat it. You're full of energy. Sometimes it's hard to eat that much before bed because you have all this energy coming out of your body because it's radiating into heat. And before it was just oh, I can't move after I did a workout because I'm so tired. When you would just eat anything and not think about what you're actually eating after for recovery or whatnot.
So how did you find this information?
So when I got into my 30s and started noticing that I started putting on a spare tire around my waist and was confused because I was exercising so much and I thought I was eating healthy because I got tips from a nutritionist. I ate a lot of processed food, but I guess you consider the foods that I ate to be more carbohydrate. So the nutritionist was like, you look great at your age, but maybe you should start incorporating some more healthy fats in your diet. So I started eating avocados and almonds and eggs and use a lot of olive oil on my food. And when I first started eating that way, I actually did start slimming out. But then after like a year and a half with, 300-400 miles a week on the bike, which is a lot.
Wow.
Lot.
Yeah. Can we pause and talk about just the level of athletics that's going on during this whole time frame?
Yeah. So I started cycling in 2007. Before that, I skateboarded for like 12 years. I was sponsored for a while and I did that. And that was really fun. And then I got into cycling. Long story short, I was on a skateboarding trip, and in my head, I had this idea that popped up and said, hey guys, what if we all got bikes and rode our bikes across the United States? And they're like, what? Like, we were on the freeway. And I was like, yeah, you know how like Forrest Gump just like got out of the house that one day and just started running because he wanted to. He was like so free. What if we got bikes and did that? That'd be really cool to show up to like a high school reunion. And instead of saying that we're like a president of a Fortune 500 company, it could be like, I rode my bicycle across the United States. That'd be awesome. And everybody was just like, okay, yeah, that'd be cool. And then the following year, I had lost my car due to some financial issues and stuff. And I realized that I can't skateboard from town to town. I should get a bike. This is the time. So I bought 2 cases of Top Ramen for a whole month. And I saved my checks for a month and a half. And I bought my first bike with cash. Like, I put a down payment. And then a month later, I walked in with the rest of the cash and paid for my first bike. And I've been riding for 10 years.
That is amazing. And that's so funny. I feel like I would do the same thing. Like, one time I was training for a half marathon, and the most I had ever run before was 5 miles. And we're just doing some little training run. And my friend and I was like, I see there's this ultra marathon that's you run for 12 hours straight. We should do it. And we just signed up that day and had no training. And then we went and ran an ultra marathon. And it's some of the coolest things in life happen from those just random moments that you just are like,
you have this idea.
You have this idea. You're with friends who are like equally crazy, and you just go for it and make it happen. But for you, you had to like go through a lot to make that happen, to even buy the bike. That's amazing.
It was intense because I wanted to buy this like $400 Fuji. And then my friend was like, Remy, I just came from San Francisco. And our friend Anthony from Lodi was a bike messenger in San Francisco at the time. And he was like, you got to look at this type of bike. It's like one gear. There's no brakes. And I rode it. Before you buy a road bike with gears and stuff, you just got to look at it. 2 weeks later, he comes home from City Bikes in Lodi with a Bianchi Pista. I rode it around the block 3 times and fell in love. And I loved the whole idea of like, you're one with the bike and you're pedaling and your legs are in control and everything. And he gave me this brochure, and inside there was a Trek T1 from 2007. And it's like Ferrari red with sparkle in it. They actually use this bike in the USA Olympics. Like, the USA team races this bike on the velodrome. And I was like, I want that bike. And it was $1,100.
Wow.
But I didn't care. I was like, why would I spend $400 on this and get this one later when I can just wait and get this one? I want this. So I went to the bike shop and had him pre-order it and put a deposit down. And I just ate ramen noodles for a month. And then
I have had really cheap, busted cars that were cheaper than your bike.
Same. I sold my car for $100 once, and it wasn't even worth that. Like, the radio in it was worth like $75. But it's also, I love that this really highlights the amount that we can save over time by cutting back on our food costs, which is a big part of what Toni and I do with our plant-based on a budget, like meal plans. But even just without those, like eating the most affordable foods, rice, beans, ramen noodles, which you can get vegan.
Yeah. And you said this was 10 years ago?
Yeah, 2007.
I bet you now that you know what plant-based food is and how to cook it and what's available to you, you would have done the cheap budget eating much differently now. And instead of getting 2 boxes of ramen noodles, you'd probably get like rice and beans and make
lentils and
make nutritious meals rather than that.
Oh yeah, totally. And then I didn't know much about nutrition. I just thought then, once I started exercising on the bike, actually, that it didn't matter. I just needed fuel. I was told by everybody at this time. I also, shortly after, started teaching spin at In Shape in Stockton, which is like pretty big now. They have them in Vacaville and Napa.
I love that place.
I taught 4 to 6 classes a week. So I was spending 20 plus hours a week there and 35 hours a week at Starbucks. And all I could be told was, man, you need more protein, man. You need protein from all the instructors at In Shape. And so, I mean, I was drinking like protein smoothies, like fruit smoothies, but it was the protein from Starbucks, which was whey protein. That is pretty minute as opposed to like eating like meat and all that. At that time, I think I might have had In-N-Out once or twice a month, and I was still eating at home. But man.
So let's fast forward to your transition to vegan. When did that happen? How did that happen? And what did that change for you?
So it's October now. I would say that around Halloween, I would say I was eating plant-based a little before Halloween, but 3 years ago is when I fully made the decision that I was, from this moment on, going to be vegan. It had been about a month and a half or so. Like, I think in August of 2015, I decided I was just going to cut out meat for a month because I wanted to see how I felt, even though I didn't eat it a lot. I didn't notice a bunch of change. Then when I started thinking about it more, I sat back and thought to myself, I was like, what is my goal here? Well, one, I want to live to be 100 minus accidents. How can I prevent that, but also live that long to see my kids grow up? And so I was like, well, I said I wouldn't give up fish because I love sushi, but I want to be the healthiest, right? So I studied the healthiest way to live on the planet. So one, my best friend's been vegan since he was 20. He's now 43. Absolute stud. He looks like he's like 25.
Wow.
And he doesn't have any specific way of eating. He just eats a plant-based diet. And then I looked at someone who's been doing it for, I believe, around 20 something years also, and just started watching it because he actually cycled. And so I was like, I need to see somebody that does this as an athlete, because I was told it was impossible to be a plant-based athlete. So I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't fail. So I started researching for weeks and watched all these videos of this guy. And, you know, my friend that I knew in person never pushed it on me. It was his beliefs. And he's like, you know, I'm never going to push something on you. This is what I want to do. It's my choice. And I really respect him for that now. And when I made the decision to go plant-based, we became so much closer. It was unreal because we'd be on bike rides and I would just be sharing all these ways that I felt, and he would be super stoked. And then he's like, dude, why don't you just go vegan? And I was like, I don't know. What if like some of the seasonings or something at my house aren't vegan? And he's like, just read the label. He's like, dude, everything you're doing, he's like, you're eating more plant-based than I am. That doesn't even make sense. He's like, you're eating all fruit all day, and then you're cooking starches at night, you know? He's like, dude, you're gonna be vegan. And so I just like looked and made sure. And then the next day I called him, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I think I got enough information to where I won't fail.
And sometimes all you need is that pep talk and support. It seems daunting and overwhelming, and you're like, how am I going to do this? But then someone is like, look, you're already doing it mostly. It's not that difficult, is it? And you're like, no, you're right. It's actually doable. I think I can get started. And it's amazing what a little bit of a support network can do for you.
Yeah, especially because so many of us, I would say almost everyone, before they make the decision to eat plant-based or go vegan, there's some block in our minds, whether it's cheese, or I hear a lot of people say, I could totally go vegan, but I can't miss my creamer in my coffee. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many creamers out there. Like, there's one little for you with spices in your cabinet. And there's always like that little block that you're like, I'm not sure what I would do about this little thing. So I'm going to abandon the idea altogether, which is so silly. Like, go vegan except for cheese or whatever, you know, and start with that.
Sometimes it's even experiences. Like for me, I was a nanny before I became vegan. I was already a vegetarian, and they fed me for free anytime I was working, and I would eat whatever the kids were eating. And I felt like I was going to be such an inconvenience to them. And like, then I wouldn't get that free food anymore, which I relied on. And so it made me feel like, oh, I can't be vegan. But I could have been vegan at home or been vegan when eating out when I was paying for it. But instead I had this huge block, and I was like, oh, can't be vegan. And I actually made it work, and it was inconvenient for a while, but over time I worked with them for 5 years, and over time we all got on board with how I can be accommodated, which was really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. I the experience thing you were talking about. So I had another friend who is plant-based now and was plant-based when I moved to Sacramento in 2012. I didn't really know much about like veganism itself other than you just don't eat meat, dairy, and eggs. But the experience I had with my friend when we lived together was like, why would you eat that peanut butter when you can't even pronounce anything on the label? And it was like such a negative approach that it never even like inspired me to even like be curious. And it had to take like my own personal experience to actually be interested. And then when the good pep talk from Adam came, it was like, you know what, maybe I am already doing it. I can do it. I should just like verify, you know?
Yeah, I have so many friends in my life who are now vegan or vegetarian or mostly that way. And they come to me often and thank me for not being pushy about my way of living or vegan eating or not trying to push that on them. And they say, I don't think I ever would have stepped into this path had I felt that sort of judgmental vibe from you, or had you pushed this on me. But because you were just like an open book and a resource I could turn to, it made it so much more accessible for them. And they're so grateful now that they took those steps. Yeah. So little cheers out there for all the little plant-based enthusiast friends who are supportive and non-judgmental and judgmental out
Killing
there.
with kindness.
Killing with kindness. Yes. Yay.
Keeping alive with kindness.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
So were you working, where were you working at the time when you decided to become plant-based?
I was still with Starbucks. So I was a coffee master with Starbucks for 12 years. So from 2005 to 2016, I was just about to hit my 12-year anniversary with Starbucks and I decided to leave. So everybody will witness the transformation there. That was like a big change because people were giving me a bunch of stuff at the time. I was eating a lot of bananas.
What do you mean?
They were just telling me like, oh, you can't eat that many bananas. It's not good for you. You're going to get a potassium overdose. And then through researching, I was like, well, as an adult, I would have to eat 400 bananas in 30 seconds to actually overdose on potassium. And bananas are actually 160th place with foods with most potassium.
I was just going to say, yeah, we all think. I remember watching
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember watching Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and there was like a fainting or something.
Yeah.
And they brought a banana. And I've always thought that bananas are what I need if I'm deficient in potassium or if I'm feeling lightheaded. And that is not the case. I could eat any leafy green. And
kiwis are huge in potassium. And even mushrooms are like no calories, all protein and potassium.
Wow.
Michelle and I don't eat mushrooms.
Oh my God. They're my favorite.
Okay. You need to dine with us because you can have all of our extra mushrooms that we'll get on the side for
Oh my
you.
gosh. Anytime. If we go to Shoki, you will have
ramen.
So many.
Oh my God.
There's this ramen place in Sacramento that Michelle and I love. But what we get has a ton of mushrooms, like half mushrooms. And I always feel bad not getting the mushrooms because I feel like I'm paying the same amount and not getting the mushrooms. And so it just makes me feel bad. So I love going with someone who eats mushrooms so then I can give them all the mushrooms that I paid for.
I didn't mention this to you probably because we were talking about the Impossible Burger the whole time. You girls didn't know that Shoki's my favorite restaurant in the whole world.
That's my favorite restaurant in the whole world.
I get double mushrooms in my vegan tauntaun, man.
Oh my gosh. We should go.
Toni gets double noodles.
I get triple extra noodles.
Triple
and
extra?
super spicy.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
Because the triple extra noodles is only 10 ounces and I normally eat 16 ounces of noodles when I eat at home. So with the corn and the mushrooms, like lately I've been getting double. But
I eat double.
Like if I'm going to go out and do stuff with people with all of the toppings, like the double mushrooms and the corn and stuff. And then we always get vegan cabbage before.
Oh, my brother gets the cabbage. I had never had it the last time I got it.
It's good. It's a sea salt based soy as opposed to, I don't know why they would put fish oil in a cabbage normally, but.
I bring everyone who comes and visits me to that restaurant because it's also my favorite. And every time I'm there, I'm always bragging about Toni and her double noodles, thinking that she's such a badass.
She totally is.
And now I'm going to be
Nobody I know gets extra noodles in there.
Now she's been shown up. Now I'm going to be like,
noodles.
I have this friend Shawn and he orders triple noodles.
You know what's funny is like back in the day before I moved to Sacramento, when I used to go to Shoki like 5 days a week when I worked at Hook and Ladder back in the day when they first opened 6 years ago now this month. And then I was working 70 hours a week and so I had as much money as I could ever want working there and Starbucks full time. And so I would eat at Shoki 3 to 5 times a week. But I used to get the regular tauntaun men then in those days. And, you know, eating that much food, I would pass out afterwards with the beef broth on top of the noodles. And like they had a hard boiled egg at the time. And, you know, before I was plant-based, I ate eggs all the time because I thought they were healthy. And I just liked the whole like dynamic of having it in the soup. And yeah.
So question, I feel like for a lot of people, especially people who grew up without a lot of money, maybe not being able to eat exciting, expensive food or eat out at restaurants, when they get to a point in life where they have a career, they have money, they can afford to eat whatever they want, the idea of then limiting some of those things, not being able to eat fancy foie gras or whatever, even though they've made it to that point, is a challenge in people's heads. So how do you feel like you're sacrificing by not being able to eat those foods, or how does that make you feel?
I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything besides like detriment to my health.
Yeah.
I feel so great every day, and I never felt great then being able to eat that food. It was just like, oh, this tastes so good, but then I always felt horrible afterwards, and I never understood that because that was a normal thing every day. Whenever I'd go eat that one thing that I wanted to eat, you go do some big workout and then you go to In-N-Out afterwards and get a 4x4 with animal style fries. You don't feel good after that. You're just like, oh my God, these flavors I need to eat. And then afterwards you're just like in a haze and everything stops. Nowadays, when I go and do a workout and then I'll either do like a really nice recovery smoothie with like blueberries and strawberries and bananas, or I'll eat pasta or, a burrito bowl or something. And I have energy to go and maybe do my laundry and fold it, or I don't feel like crap. I did a 5-hour race 2 Saturdays ago, and afterwards I had everything prepared. I had the right food beforehand, and I felt strong the whole time. And I haven't raced all year. It was my first bike race of the year, and it was a really intense race. So, I mean, it's what you are putting in your body, like you were saying earlier with the track. It like tells its own story as you go along with experience. And, I wouldn't be running right now anymore, or I wouldn't be running Boston in April if I hadn't switched to a plant-based diet.
You're running Boston in April?
Oh yeah, I just got the confirmation email last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
they had
amazing.
to verify that I did CIM in a proper time.
Qualified.
I ran my first marathon in December.
And then qualified for Boston?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I just heard somebody maybe tell me that a 3-hour marathon was fast. So I just told myself as a kid, like, I can run a 3-hour marathon. I'm good enough to run a 3-hour marathon. And I didn't run, but I just told myself that I could do it. I think that when I was a kid, if I would have had someone to inspire me and push me, I probably could have got a scholarship to any school, because I think that I was really fast as a kid. Like, I was the fastest kid at baseball tryouts, but still was like the kid sitting in the corner with no friends with the Payless cleats. And, I never got to hit a home run. Besides in practice, I hit one, and I stood in the outfield. So I was just super low self-esteem as a kid. But, 9 years ago, I ran for the first time, and somebody's like, what are you doing? Like, how did you just run that fast? I was like, I don't know. I just bought the shoes at Ross and I went out and I ran. I didn't know how fast to run. I just ran as fast as I could for 4 miles. They're like, you need to do like the Thanksgiving run. You could win money. And I just never took them up on it because I wasn't doing it because I wanted to. It's because I started cycling and I love the idea of exercise. And then, I did within the third day I ran 13 miles with my friend who was like the sheriff of the Stockton PD. And he ran, 6 miles a day every day since he was like 18. He was in like the Navy and stuff. And then that led to doing my first half marathon, Avenue of the Vines in Lodi, my first month of running. And did it in under an hour and a half. And my buddy who owned Fleet Feet was like, dude, Remy, you should be running. And I just never took anybody up on it. So for the last 9 years, I ran once or twice a year, maybe 10 times a year, but like 15 minutes, or every 6 months I'll go out and run 10 miles. And
Just 10 miles.
So last year I was like, okay, my sponsors are going to take me to CIM. So I was like, okay, I'm going to actually train like I would on a bike. So I ran 20 times before CIM. It started out with a 15-minute run and a 6.5 mile. 3 times a week. So I got used to that feeling. And that was like pretty achievable for me. 15 minutes isn't very long. And I knew that I could run faster than that, but it's all about consistency of holding that. So 3 times a week. The next week I did it 30 minutes 2 times a week. And then after that, I would do like a warm-up run the day before and do 45 minutes at that time. And then the next week would be an hour at that time, 1 time a week only.
So these are 6.5-minute miles.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening, that is really hard to do for 1 mile. I'm actually kind of upset at you because I've been running a lot. For like 6 months, I've been running like, I don't know, for me, it feels like a lot, like maybe 10 miles a week or something. But I have Strava, which you also have, which is a running GPS app. And so I'm like trying to beat my mile time and feeling like all good about myself. And then I met you and I found you on Strava and followed you. And like when I got really excited about getting my top mile time. I looked at yours and I was like, oh, I'm like,
that's great though. You got your top mile time.
Yeah. But 6.5 minute miles is phenomenal. And to hold that mile after mile is just like insane.
And also for those who are not runners, my one and only miserable marathon time was 5 hours. And I was so proud. I was crying and I was
finished.
like, I finished. Oh my gosh. I thought I was going to die. And it was such a success for me that I can't even imagine what doing it in 2 hours less time would feel like.
Well, I have so much respect for the people that are doing it in 5 hours and 6 hours, because if you think about it, people are like, how did you run in under 3 hours? And I'm used to doing those on my bike, you know. That doesn't mean that you're a fast runner if you ride a bike, definitely, because I have plenty of friends who ride bikes who can't even touch a 7-minute mile. But in my head, it's, you know, under a 3-hour workout's not that much. Or if I went out and ran for an hour, I know how to go out and push myself for an hour of intensity. It's just all about me going out and like running so that I have the form, because when you're running on form, that's way better than running off form. Like if I go out and run for an hour right now, I might be able to do a 6-minute mile for an hour, but I'm going to be really trashed afterwards. My body's going to be messed up. But back to what I was going to say is, I know people who ran it in like 6 something. And I have so much respect because 6+ hours running sounds so gnarly on your legs and your knees that, yes, I might have ran it fast, but imagine how much longer you had to go through that on your knees. Like, I just feel like doing it longer would be more detrimental to like your recovery and your body because you're enduring it for longer as opposed to faster.
That sounds right. Okay, so let's go back to the restaurant.
Okay.
So you were working at Starbucks and you were serving up dairy products there. Did you have to taste it? Did you, like, how did you, when a new product came out, how did that work for you?
We don't have to taste at Starbucks.
Oh.
I mean, we get a brochure and it's like, you know, there was a girl who, it was against her religion to drink coffee. Prior to me working, it's one of like the best stories I've heard. My manager was like, I had the best coffee master who had never tasted coffee because she read the material and she was passionate about it, but she just didn't drink it because it was against her religion. So, I mean, you can know stuff without tasting it. Same thing at the restaurant. Now, I do taste alcoholic beverage with a straw. It's a drop. I don't drink personally. So, but if it has like dairy or anything in it, I won't, you know, or egg, I won't taste it. But it's just like a quality assurance thing. I know how it's supposed to taste.
Okay. So you were at Starbucks.
Okay.
How long did you work? How long did you continue working there? And then when did you move over to the restaurant industry?
I moved back to the restaurant 3 years ago. So
right when you became vegan?
Yeah, like right after.
Okay.
So yeah, right after in January of 2016, I went to the restaurant.
And were your bosses concerned? Like, did they know you were vegan? Because you work at a restaurant that doesn't serve it at that time, especially was not vegan friendly.
They didn't know at first because I just didn't say anything. Nobody was ever like, oh, hey. And then one day we did family meal back then. We would do family meal every day. And they're like, oh, Remy, try this. And I was like, no, thank you. And they're like, oh, what? You don't want it? It's really good. And I was just like, no, it's good. They're like, well, why don't you want any? And I was, oh, I'm vegan. So, I don't eat that. It has egg in it. And then just like shortly after that, everybody just knew. And then everybody would see me bringing my meals.
It's really funny because a lot of people who are not vegan have that saying that's like, how do you know someone's vegan? They'll tell you.
Yeah.
But for me, I very rarely bring it up. And it's always other people are like, why don't you want this? Why don't you want this? Why don't you want this? And then I'm like, oh, because I don't eat animal products. and sometimes a long time ago, especially when I was more sensitive to making that a big part of my identity, I would be like, oh, well, I don't eat milk. I don't eat meat. I don't eat eggs. And they'd be like, so you're a vegan? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm a vegan. But now I don't care. And veganism is much more cruel than it was back then. And it was such a big negative connotation, the word vegan. So I was very sensitive to it for a while. Yeah. But I find that experience more realistic where you're like, oh, no, thank you. I'll pass. Not right now. And then they're like, but why? Why?
It's weird because when I first started, they just did family meal and it was whatever. Well, there was one other person that was vegan at the restaurant at the time, and then a girl who had eaten plant-based prior, but then stopped because she was working so much, actually went back to plant-based because she's seen how much I was working and how much I did it every day. My buddy owns a restaurant and was like, hey, you guys need to start like making stuff for like that Remy can eat, and if there's anybody else that's vegan. But I feel like once I started there, they started doing like, oh, here, you guys could have fries at family meal,
Right.
Because they just made one type of meal. So it was always like pulled pork or whatever.
Do you think it was because you're so positive and cool that they wanted to accommodate you? They liked you as a person? Yeah. And
I think I just make it more approachable, maybe because everybody else is so quiet about it and maybe like not ashamed, but they don't want the attention. Yeah. And for me, it's like, this is great. Why wouldn't I want to share it, Yeah.
And when you say, why wouldn't you want to share it? How do you share it? What is your approach that's different?
I don't know. I feel like after changing to eat that way, I didn't share how I ate before. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I eat meat, like I didn't go around telling people that. I never felt good. Yeah, I've always like for somewhat like the last 10 years had like a positive attitude. And once I found out how it's nice to be your own person and, like do what you want to do, it's just an easier way of life. But inside, I didn't feel like healthy.
So at work, do you make it a point to encourage people to eat plant-based, or do you just share your own experiences and how beneficial they've been to you?
Yeah, I share my own experiences and I try to keep it on the minimal. Like at first I would talk about it a lot. I already talk a lot in general. So like trying to preach veganism at work, they have me there to sell drinks and serve people. So I try not to get into it too much because I'm not there for that. So, and also I don't want to make somebody feel bad for what they're eating at the restaurant where I work,
So can you paint a picture of the restaurant where you work and what you do there?
Okay. Hook and ladder. It's like, I would say American cuisine. Some people say it's expensive. I personally know how cheap it is to eat. So it is on the pricier side, but not compared to a lot of the other restaurants. Our Impossible Burger is $2 cheaper than anywhere I've seen in Sacramento, which is kind of cool. And super nice. It's a little dark for my preference, but it has a nice setting. And I love the back patio. As you said earlier, it's got great lighting and the atmosphere. It's like one of my favorite things about the decor of the restaurant.
It may be my favorite patio in Sacramento.
It's a just wholly beautiful restaurant. Very trendy. It seems like just such a popular, trendy.
And it's very green. Like the back patio has plants and like it's very pretty to look at. I hosted a birthday party there and some other celebration. I can't remember. The only patio that I like just a step below, I think, is the Revolution Wine patio.
The front patio, that's the only one they have, right? Okay, yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, so we have an amazing florist, Megan, who comes and makes sure the plants are good on Sundays. I'll be doing brunch and she'll come in and get a coffee and she'll just be there like working away at the plants, making sure they're maintained. And she does a really great job. Really nice girl.
Okay, so back to what you do.
I'm a bartender at Hook and Ladder. And before that, I've been doing it now for a year and a half. And I bartended there for maybe 7 months back in the day when I worked there 5 years ago. But when I came back in January 2016, I was bussing again from the bottom. And I just wanted to be a part of the restaurant because I loved how they made me feel there. They made me feel like family. And, I didn't have a ton of bartending experience. They had just offered that when I worked there prior because I was doing such a great job. So I just started as busser and then I did some expo and I would bartend banquet events upstairs, private events. And then it transferred last August back into me just speaking up to the new bar manager saying like, can I help behind the bar to get some extra hours? And then her finding out that I actually wanted to get back behind the bar again. And she thought it'd be a great fit. So now I bartend full time there.
So can you talk a little bit about the type of food served there, how vegan friendly it was when you first started there, and how that made you feel as a vegan?
When I first started working there wasn't anything vegan. I don't think it bothered me because I already didn't eat out a lot. I'd already know I brought my food to work already just from like researching and knowing with Starbucks. I would be bringing my food always to work.
But what about serving the animal products?
Well, you were vegan mostly for health too. So it wasn't really an ethical thing at that point for you?
Right. At first, it was mainly because people always say, don't say it's for selfish reasons, but it was because of my health, at first.
Yeah.
And then I watched all the videos that I didn't want to watch as a kid, or not as a kid, but like in the past, I didn't want to watch those because I didn't want to see that stuff. And then watching it, I immediately made a decision. That was my ultimate factor after, like, before deciding to go vegan, was I watched, Cowspiracy and like Earthlings and all that. And that was intense. Yeah. And I just was like, okay, I'm going to do this because the fish are suffering just as much. You see them suffocating on the deck. And I didn't realize that you're blind to it until you see it.
Right. So you realize that those types of products are contributing to not great things in the world. Was there ever any ethical conflict in your mind and heart as you were at a restaurant that pretty much that's everything they sold?
Yeah. I didn't have to serve at the restaurant, so it wasn't so bad. I mean, I cleaned plates and stuff. I was bussing, so I was just setting up the table and then cleaning it up afterwards. It wasn't that bad. Starbucks, I kind of wanted out once we started getting these things called like the egg sous vide. So we had to cook these like poached eggs in the oven. It was like bacon and egg, and then there was like cheese. And I kind of just was getting fed up with people coming in because all the stuff I learned. Everybody's like, are there any carbs in those eggs? I can't have any carbs right now. And they'd be miserable. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. It's just people being misled, and it's okay. You have to learn through your experience. But once I had to start serving eggs at Starbucks, like real eggs for breakfast, I was just kind of over it. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm passionate about coffee, but I don't want to be in this. So I just decided to leave. And when I left for Thailand, I'm not coming back.
Yeah. And now, do you serve food?
I do serve food now, so it doesn't necessarily bother me so much. The one thing that bothers me the most on the daily basis is I can't stand the smell of fish and chips. To me, it smells like chemical, like they washed it in bleach or something. It's wild Alaskan cod, so apparently it's going to smell like fish. Lately, people were like, oh, it smells like fish in here. This smells bad. And I'm like, oh, I just thought that's how fish smell. And they're like, had someone return it, and they're like, would you eat this? And I was like, I don't eat fish. And he's like, oh, what are you, vegetarian? I was like, actually, I'm vegan. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I was like, oh, don't be. It's my body. And then so he's like, yeah, I'll just take the burger. I was like, okay, cool. He's like, medium rare. So it's just stuff like that. There's two incidents at the restaurant that I only talked to a couple people about that really like opened my eyes and really made me feel uncomfortable in a way. So I was working one night when I was bussing right before I became bartender again. And I walked into the back to go fill water pitchers, and they had a half of a pig on the table, which I've never seen at the restaurant because it's always just like they get stuff like small and it's already like dissected. And this was like a whole half of a pig. So it was like a pig was standing and they just cut it in the middle. Down
front half or back half?
The whole pig. So long ways.
Oh, God.
So, I mean, I walk into the back and I just see the whole inside of a pig. And in my head, I was just like, what the? And I acted like I didn't really like it was just normal. I walked and turned my back to fill the waters across the room. But I was just like, what if that was me on the table? That looks like a human. Like pigs, people say they're like close to a human, but yeah, I was like that. I was like, what if that was my body laying down on the table? And you just seen half of my body split in half. Like that could be me. And like someone made a joke like, hey, who wants pork chops for dinner tonight? As they're like cutting up the thing, I was like, how is this normal? You're cutting this animal up and you're saying like, hey, let's make pork chops. And it was just so graphic. And I just didn't really want to talk to anybody about it because I didn't want anybody at work to know it bothered me. But I just told a friend about it. But then a second time, maybe in the last like 4 months or so, they had gotten another pig, and then they had the pig's head. So when I walked into the walk-in, the head itself was in a pot. And then someone on a piece of tape, I don't know who did it, but I didn't tell anybody because I feel like they did it to like get a rise out of somebody. It said vegan special, do not touch. And it was just like the pig's nose sticking out of the water, but it was like the whole face. So what they did is they cooked down the head and did whatever with it. But I would just like, oh, sorry. It was intense. It was, I'd never seen anything like that prior, and I mean, maybe in like Thailand, you would see like the animals on the street, like when they were serving it up or whatever. You could buy like a pig's head, but it was like flies all over it, and it wasn't as real. Like this pig looked like it had just like straight up gotten killed and like came in, and it was like straight after death. And so it just really like hit me, and I was like, oh man, what am I doing? Like I don't want to see this stuff on the normal. But I haven't seen anything since. You hear about it and you talk about it, but when you see it behind the scenes, like I feel like if people seen that, I mean, some people would be like, oh cool, yeah, we're gonna try it.
I think about my own family and our relationships to our companion animals, our dogs, our cats, and even the animals that they see at petting zoos where they like pet the goat or they pet the pig and they're really excited, especially right now around the like the pumpkin patch season where people go and hang out with all these animals but then have this huge disconnect. It took me a while to recognize it, but those experiences, especially that you have where you saw a dead animal, is really powerful. I worked at a sanctuary, and part of my job was educating people on like what happens to animals and showing the live animal, saying this animal was rescued from this place. And so many people had no idea that that kind of suffering existed.
It's intense. It's a lot to handle, I feel like. And I can only imagine for a child. I had my daughters watch some of Earthlings. Their mom was really angry with me, but I just wanted them to know. Because, I mean, I don't know if I could have handled it as a kid, but I couldn't handle it as an adult. But I wanted them to see, because my daughter wanted to eat plant-based, my oldest. And they were bawling, so I turned it off. But, I mean, maybe I shouldn't have showed it to them, but I'm a parent, so I got to, trial and error. You got to just test the waters, I guess.
And what do you want to, like, how do you, like, do you end up compartmentalizing the stuff that you've seen at the restaurant?
Yeah, I don't know. I just know this is right now, like, this is what I got to do, A lot of people ask me, like, hey, you don't drink or you're vegan. Why do you work here? And in my head, it's like, well, I'm not going to make money selling bananas. I have to make a living. I have to have a place to live and, support my kids. And this allows me to do that. The people at the establishment, they treat me right, and they give me a good atmosphere to work, and they allow me to live my lifestyle, which is be an athlete or go on trips and just adventure and have fun. So it's a nice job, and like, there's no vegan restaurant in town. If there was, I would love to work at a vegan restaurant. That'd be awesome. It'd be perfect for me. But there's not, and if there are a couple of places that are like almost fully plant-based with like vegetarian options, but that's not going to pay my bills,
And also what I think Michelle is getting at is...
Yes. You have taken lemons and made lemonade out of this situation. When we met you, there were amazing vegan options on the menu. We ordered the Impossible Burger, which was incredible. And there were some other specials that were also vegan. And you had said, these didn't exist before, but I helped bring them on the menu. So that's amazing. I want to hear all about that.
So we didn't have any vegan options on the menu when I first started there. And so if you came in and you're just like, oh, hey, I'm vegan or vegetarian, they would just like tweak the menu for you, which, a few years ago, that was pretty much normal. That was like the standard. Mm-hmm. And then when Matt Massera came on, he's not there anymore, but he was there for a short time. He was the chef at Mother, which he had already had a plant-based background and doing some cooking. So he had brought some options because I was there. So we were testing like a vegan hook and ladder burger. So my friend, who's the owner, we went and did a race. And then after the race, we stopped at Whole Foods in Folsom and got veganese and some vegan cheese. And he made us the vegan Calabrian chili aioli with the veganese instead of mayo and no egg. And we used the Beyond patty. And we made the hook and ladder burger. At the time, they were doing 2 thin patties, which with 2 Beyond burgers, that's huge. It's like 40 grams of protein just from the meat. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't even finish my fries with it, but we were testing out stuff. And because people would see me, I'd be bringing meals every day to work. They're like, you're going to eat all that pasta right now? I'm in a 15-hour day. Like, I need the calories to process everything I'm doing. And then tomorrow I got to do it all over. So I'm always consuming. And yeah, so we had started like trying to get on the menu. I was like, we need to do this on the menu. And my friend who owns a restaurant was seeing the different changes in me, but also had a friend who worked at the Sac B who was a food critic who had went plant-based. And he is in his late 40s at least. And he had witnessed a huge change. Like, he had a ton of weight loss and like health, and his girlfriend as well. And she's all of a sudden had like these pro stats in bike racing, like, and started doing really well. And you could just see her change in like 9 months. So between those two, they started like trying to do a vegan menu if it was asked for. So they had a small menu. And then when our chef left, we had gotten our new chef who's there to this day. And I was a little worried because we were talking about doing a vegan burger and then it didn't happen. But in a way, I'm kind of glad it waited because we weren't going to be able to get the Impossible Burger for whatever reason at that time. And they were going to do the Beyond Burger, but they were talking about how expensive it was. So I had suggested, since they're doing 2 thin patties, to slice the Beyond in half. And so then therefore it'd be better on cost, but then also wouldn't be as heavy. And it would just be 20 grams of protein, which is perfect from the patty. And once we waited, we were able to get the Impossible Burger. And then that's how the whole menu started with the chickpea fritter that came out last year, Thanksgiving week. That was the first thing that was like legit the oldest vegan thing on our menu. I tried it the day before it got put on the menu coming in to share my vegan mac and cheese from my Friendsgiving that I did. And was super stoked on it. Everybody loves the fritter. And then all of a sudden this like whole menu formed. And then they did the cavatelli. I don't think you girls got to try that. That's not on the menu anymore.
And I was like, oh, that looks so good.
Excuse me. It was pretty good. They do the cavatelli in-house, and they use this little machine. It's been on the story a few times of Galice cranking out the pasta. It's pretty cool.
I have another question that's a little bit irrelevant. So you said that they took something off the menu. If Michelle and I go every day or every time that we're in there, say, hey, will you please bring that back? How powerful is that? How powerful is it when consumers of the restaurant ask for something? So if a lot of vegans go in there and say, I want more vegan options, is that powerful?
I hope so. I would think it would be because, during the Vegan Chef Challenge.
Oh, by the way, the Vegan Chef Challenge in Sacramento is a challenge where our friend Bethany Davis and team went to all these restaurants that were really popular and awesome and well loved by everybody. And we're like, okay, yeah, you're a tasty, popular restaurant, but can you do vegan? And they challenged them in a contest where people can go try their vegan menu and vote. So that's the Vegan Chef Challenge.
I think when we had the Vegan Chef Challenge, we had a huge number of people coming in. I was blown away by how many people were coming in for the Vegan Challenge. I already knew that people that weren't vegan wanted to try it because they were interested, but the number of people who were actually vegan, I didn't know existed, because in Sacramento, I think everybody before last year was afraid to say they were vegan because going around, anybody that I knew that wasn't around California, they were like, Remy, you're like in the Mecca. And I was like, LA is like 6 hours away. I don't know anybody that's vegan. I have a couple friends that have chose to go plant-based, and I have a friend who lives in Yosemite who's been vegan, for like a year or so longer than me. And it's just not common.
We think.
Yeah.
I swear to God, every time I go to Whole Foods, someone stops me and says, I'm vegan too. And I'm like, how did you even know I'm vegan? And like, maybe they saw videos or whatever, but it just seems like they're out there just not talking about it. But you have proof of that now, how many there are.
It was insane because literally the last Vegan Chef Challenge we did in, earlier in the year, it was insane. Our Impossible Burgers, we actually didn't sell the most. I found out after I'd seen you girls there. I was blown away because we did 782 Impossible Burgers for the month, which is a lot. This other place sold apparently like 1,200 or something.
Whoa.
But I learned, so I don't know how accurate it was, but I learned it was just like, how much would you say you sold? And so it was more of a guesstimation.
So with your 700 that month, how does that compare to the other items on the menu that month?
that month for sure, Impossible Burger like topped everything. Definitely. I mean, it was being promoted a tremendous amount. We had just gotten our new media team, and they've been doing so great since. They're so involved, and they've just been crushing it. I'm like really proud because people are coming in left and right saying, regardless if it's for the Impossible Burger or whatever it is, oh, I seen this on Facebook, or I seen this on your story. And it's becoming more personable. Like, oh, this is Remy's drink. We want to come in and we want to talk to the guy who made this drink. So people are like, they're really like drawn to that.
It's crazy because to get a new customer into a restaurant through traditional advertising is expensive. But by just adding a vegan option onto a restaurant menu that's not traditionally super vegan, there's so much just free buzz that goes around that, and so many new people who are going to come into the restaurant for the very first time. And like, I went in there and now I can't wait to go back and bring Dan. And it's just like, you get these new lifelong supportive customers because of that, because you're selling something that it doesn't take really any extra cost or money or anything to bring it on.
And I'm super excited about initiatives like the Vegan Chef Challenge because it introduces us to new restaurants that we think are totally unvegan friendly. And Hook and Ladder is on there. And so someone like Michelle, who is new to Sacramento, doesn't really know the restaurant scene, can look at this list that has vegan friendly restaurants that are not known for being vegan friendly and think, oh, I'm going to try that because this place recommends it. That is the Vegan Chef Challenge. And so, yeah. And what is also really cool about that is that restaurants they're able to see how vegans come in huge masses when they put a vegan option and when it's promoted properly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And a lot of these places end up keeping at least one of their vegan dishes. So that's really cool.
I don't think the Impossible Burger is going anywhere. I just hope that we can see something. I would like to upgrade it in a way. My favorite thing was tomatoes, and tomatoes went out of season already. So without the tomatoes, it's not quite what it was before. I feel like that was a huge component for me. I love putting a lot of veggies on it. But
opportunity for chef to get creative.
Totally. Yeah. I would like to see a cheese in the future, maybe even I'm okay without it. Yeah. But I know a lot of people ask for the cheese. They're like, when are you going to get vegan cheese again? So I've been trying to push for that.
That's awesome. I think your story of entering a space that's not at all vegan friendly, that's really sort of subliminally bullying you, putting pig heads, calling out the vegan, I'm sure in good jest, but that can of course be hurtful. And you sticking through and just being a positive attitude, a light in the space, and being open to conversation and encouraging new items on the menu is so inspiring. And it is something that all of us have the power to do, especially those who are working in restaurants, to take that opportunity to inspire some new restaurant items, some positive change. But even more generally, a lot of people instead of focusing on the negative, you might live somewhere that's not vegan friendly. When I first went vegan, I was in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's not vegan friendly. And one could look at that situation and be like, man, this was the worst place to go vegan. It was really hard. There were a lot of challenges, but I saw it the opposite way. Oh my gosh, I'm in a place where there's so much opportunity to inspire change. I can go leafleting, and most of the people I reach have never heard of factory farming. And, there's so many restaurants that with just a little bit of TLC would love to bring on some new options. So there's just so many opportunities out there, especially if you're in a situation that seems particularly challenging. I bet there's a way to flip it to make it a positive.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that you came on to our podcast to share your experience. I feel like it can be an overwhelming decision, especially if you work in a job that doesn't seem accommodating. As I mentioned, I was a nanny and I didn't want to lose my access to my free meal. And a lot of people work in restaurants and you can't quit your job because you changed your diet. And so you sharing your experience and showing that you can have influence with a positive attitude, and you can make it so that the other people who maybe aren't as vocal as you can have options for vegan food in the family meal or whatever the situation is. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your very, very positive attitude and experiences. I really appreciate it.
Yes, same. And For those listening, if you feel inspired by Shawn, who, how could you not? He's amazing. I recently started following your YouTube channel where you share like your meals and your kind of athletic journey, and you're on Instagram. So can you tell us a little bit about where people can find you and maybe get some more of that inspiration?
Yeah, so all of my social media handles are Shawn Remy. It's ShawnRemy. I always got my name spelled Sean as a kid, so I always just go by Remy. It's a little more like easy to remember.
Shawn Remy on social media.
Yeah. And I just share my journey as a plant-based athlete, and basically like first chapter till I turn 40, and then on from there.
Cool. And I'll drop those down in the show notes on our website.
Mm-hmm. And we generally end the podcast asking if you have anything inspiring that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Well, one thing I remember I said that you guys liked that I don't think made it into our audio got messed up, but just remember, when anybody tells you something's impossible, impossible stands for I'm possible.
I love that.
Very sweet. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shawn.
Thank you so much for listening to our episode.
As always, you can find the show notes over at plantpoweredpodcast.com with links to everything we mentioned today. And we absolutely love when you guys leave us reviews. So if you want to leave us a review on iTunes, we would so appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thanks again. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.